O'r gorau gyfeillion, diolch yn fawr iawn am ddod i fyny yn ôl i fan hyn mor gyflym ar ôl y paned pnawn. Mae gennym ni un panel o sylwedd, un sesiwn gynnwys go iawn ar ôl cyn i ni fynd at y sesiwn gloi. Ond mae'r panel yma wedi dod at ei gilydd a mae yna nifer o gyfeiriadau wedi bod yn ystod y dydd yn barod yn does. Nid yn unig at y cyfryngau cymdeithasol ond hefyd at y cyfryngau. Ac felly mae'n briodol iawn bod gennym ni banel sydd yn canolbwyntio ar Pêl-droed a chyfryngau ynghyd-destun ieithoedd lleiafrifedig. Felly dwi'n mynd i drosglwyddo'r awenna'n syth at, wel gan bod pawb wrthi'n defnyddio'u teitlau academaidd heddiw, Dr Enrique Uribe-Jongbloed sydd yn gweithio ym Brifysgol Caerdydd ar y rhaglen Media Cymru, ac mi fydd Enrique yn cyflwyno mwy amdano ei hun ac yn cyflwyno'r panel. O bosib, os oes gen ti rhywbeth i ddeud, os ydy Enrique yn dechrau gwanio, cwmpo i gysgu ar yr gadarn am fanna, mae hynny oherwydd bai un person bach sydd yn llai na mis oed sydd wedi cael ei geni'n ddiweddar ac sy'n cadw Enrique ar ei hun drwy'r nos. Felly, llongyfarchiadau ar ddod yn dad, Enrique, a edrych ymlaen at glywed ti yn cyflwyno'r panel.
Diolch, Elen. Diolch, Craig. Yn un o yma. Wel, Enrique Uribe-Jongbloed dwi'n gweithio fel cymryd ymchwil yn y prosiect Media Cymru, yn y canolfan i'r economi creadigol yn Brifysgol Caerdydd. Wel, dwi'n falch iawn i gael y cyfle i cadeirio y panel yma gyda Maina le Gars, sydd cyn chwaraewr daig a sylwebedd o Leddaw, a hefyd gyda MacAoidh, sy'n dod o'r Alban, a hefyd newyddiadwr hefyd, a sylwebedd, a dyn ni'n cael hefyd Iolo Cheung, sy'n dod o Gymru, sydd newyddiadwr, a sylwebedd hefyd. Wel, nes i trio ymarfer i ddweud y gair, a roedd o'n berffaith. Tan, wel, 5 munud nôl. Wel, dwi'n hapus iawn i gael y cyfle, a dwi eisiau i dechrau gyda cyflwyniad bach am beth ydy eich gyrfa chi ac eich profiad chi, yn wneud bethau yn y cyfryngau. You can start then.
Bonjour there. So, as you said, I'm Maina. I'm from Rydyn, so far west of Europe. So in Rydyn there are 2 regional languages, which are Breton, that I speak, cousin from Gyfryngau, and which is spoken historically in the lower part of Rydyn, Brifysgol, and Gallo, which is spoken in the upper part of Rydyn, Brifysgol. And so regarding football, I've been playing football since I was 8 years old, with boys mainly, to start, and a few girls. Then I stopped when for my studies, and I started to play football again once I was settled with women's teams. At what we call in France, 2nd regional level, so middle level, not so high, not so low, but yeah. And I'm really passionate about football, as far as I can remember. I watch a lot of games, men's games and women's games. And yes, and I read a lot about football, so this is why Erwan Blanchard, who is a journalist from a local Breton radio called Arvorig FM, has asked me if I would be happy to comment some matches as a volunteer with him. So we started by commenting the final of the World Cup between France and Argentina. And, but we're mainly commenting matches from Breton teams, so FC Nantes, Stade Rennais, En Avant Guingamp, and For instance, this year we commented the matches of Stade Brestois, which was in Champions League, so it was historical, so we commented all these matches. So, yes, this is about me and being here. And maybe about the context in Brittany. Well, the only official language in Brittany in France is French. So Breton is not, I can say it's a minoritized language because it's not even recognized. So I would say it's a regional language. And the direct consequence of this is that the number of people speaking Breton is decreasing very rapidly. Today there are 107,000 people speaking Breton, and it's half, in 6 years we lost half of the people speaking Breton, so it's huge. And so the consequence is also that the language don't have so much visibility in society in general, and therefore in media. So for instance, in public media, TV and radio, there will be maybe 2 hours or 3 hours per week of Breton. In regional newspapers, you will have 1 article per month or per week, so it's very rare. So they don't cover football or sports because they don't have time. They will cover more local news or cultural news. But there are a few of full Breton-speaking medias, which are all non-profit organizations. So you have, for instance, and so they do cover football because they have all day to speak about a lot of stuff. So you have, for instance, a web media which is called Brezo Web. And they did comment live some final of the Breton Cup, so with images and comments in Breton. And so, as I said before, there is also the radio. So they have daily news. So they will speak about the results of the weekend, Breton clubs, but also European clubs or national teams. And so, yes, for the overview, I think that's it.
Yeah, thank you very much, Maina. Derek, if you want to.
Sure, yeah, I'm Derek Mackay. I come from the Isle of Lewis, which is the most northerly of the Western Isles, or the Outer Hebrides off the west coast of Scotland. From the parish that I'm from is still pretty much up there, as according to last census, as one of the most Gaelic areas of Scotland. But even in my lifetime, we've seen kind of the decline in there of speakers from being 65-70% to being around about 50%. So in broad terms, Gaelic as a community language is really, really marginal. It's really in a difficult position. But where we have an advantage over Breton is that we have a much more favourable governmental and state situation. And a lot of the support that exists has been funded directed towards the media. BBC Alba was created as a joint venture between the BBC and MG Alba, who spend a lot of government money, not enough, but a lot, on Gaelic media. That channel started in 2007. And since then, one of its main focuses has been to broadcast sport as a means to fulfill one of the key aims of the channel, which was set by government in terms of driving vast viewer figures compared to the number of Gaelic speakers. BBC Alba was being asked to attract regularly 250,000 people as an audience, as opposed to there being approximately 50,000 Gaelic speakers. More people than that have an ability, or some ability in Gaelic. The number increased in the last census, largely thanks to Duolingo, we think. So that doesn't mean that they're all Gaelic speakers, but they have some knowledge of it. So sport was one of the ways that the channel aimed from the very beginning to drive an audience. And it's done that primarily through football, but also through rugby, doing the Pro 14 in all its various guises up until a few years ago when PTV took over, and also shinty and various other sports along the way. But football has been the main driver of that. I've always been mad keen on football, so I was delighted to get a chance to commentate on it. One of the things we've done is we have a balance in terms of how we try and present football to the audience. and all sports. Our programmes are always led in Gaelic, so there will be me or another saying hello to everybody at home in Gaelic. The match commentary will be primarily in Gaelic, but we do a lot of our analysis in English. The idea behind that, and it's not uncontroversial, is to leave the door open to non-Gaelic speakers in the audience to drive those bigger figures of audiences. Does it work? We get some figures, we don't know. Audience figures are unreliable for the same reason as they're unreliable for S4C and for other minority channels. But it has certainly helped to boost the profile of Gaelic in non-traditional Gaelic-speaking communities. It's boosted the profile of Gaelic amongst sections of the Scottish population that would have no thought of Gaelic were it not for the fact that they had to watch their bloody football team on that weird channel, where I don't understand what they're saying, but, you know, at least it's on the telly. Does it satisfy Gaelic speakers? No, not entirely. A lot of them are annoyed by the English. A lot of them don't care about the English because we are all fundamentally bilingual. There's not a Gaelic speaker on the planet that doesn't speak English. And there's very few Gaelic speakers on the planet who are not actually more comfortable in English. So for a lot of people, it's perfectly natural to have that switch between Gaelic and English all the time. Is it linguistically helpful? I don't know. That's an argument for another day. But the situation we have is that it is one of the main drivers of BBC Alba's reach, and therefore it's one of the biggest costs for the channel, but it's one of the biggest investments, but it's also one of those that is becoming harder and harder to maintain in the current kind of media environment. It's one of the big challenges we've got, but that's perhaps a topic for another day. But it's very important to the way that Gaelic television particularly has been pushed in the last few years. It's around in radio too. We do a lot of radio coverage of big games, cup finals, Scotland home internationals, things like that. But telly is the one has been driving it.
Iolo?
So Iolo dwi yn gweithio fel newyddiadurwr i BBC yng Nghymru. Dwi wedi bod ers bron i 9 mlynedd rwan, a newyddiadurwr cyffredinol, newyddion cyffredinol ydw i ar y cyfan, nid newyddiadurwr chwaraeon, bod lot o bobl yn meddwl mod i. Cyn hynny, mi o'n i'n gweithio i golwg 360, felly cylchgrawn a gwefan newyddion Gymraeg, ac yn amlwg trwy'r gwaith dwi'n neud efo'r BBC ar hyn o bryd, mae hwnna'n cynnwys newyddion S4C hefyd a'r brydiau, felly dwi'n meddwl ar draws popeth dwi'n mwy neu lai wedi gweithio i ran fwyaf o beth sy'ch chi'n disgrifio fel cyfryngau iaith Gymraeg, yn sicr sy'n darlledu mewn gwahanol ffyrdd neu gilydd. Sut mae hwnna'n berthnasol i chwaraeon? Dwi'n siŵr os di'r slides nes i baratoi, na i jyst siarad dros rhywun lluniau os modd cael hwnna fyny. Ond ie, pan ges i'r gwahoddiad ar gyfer hwn i ddechrau, a oedd yna awgrym ar gyfer enw'r sesiwn, sef pwysigrwydd Pêl-droed ar gyfryngau ieithoedd Lleiafrifol, a nath hwnna daflu fi chydig bach, achos o'n i wedi meddwl mai, fel da ni wedi clywed lot o sgyrsiau heddiw, sgwrs ynglyn â sut mae'r iaith yn helpu Pêl-droed, neu pa rôl sy'n gan yr iaith mewn Pêl-droed. A nes i feddwl wedyn, dwi rioed wedi ystyried y ffordd arall, sut mae Pêl-droed yn helpu y cyfryngau ieithoedd Lleiafrifol. Hynny di, lle fydda'r cyfryngau ieithoedd Lleiafrifol tas y Pêl-droed ddim yna. Do'n i rioed wedi ystyried y cwestiwn mawr blaen, felly nes i feddwl amdano fo. Ac ie, mae'n ddiddorol. Na i sgipio dros fy enw i a mynd i'r lluniau. Achos ie, fel ydych chi'n gweld, felly ar y chwith, mae yna jyst cwpl o siamplau fyna o nghyfnod efo golwg. A ie, oedd hwnna yn gyfnod lle nes i ddechrau gweithio ddyn nhw'n 2013 ac fel gohebydd ifanc a wedi cael rhyw fath o ryddid i fynd lle o'n eisiau efo rhai o'r bethau. O'n i'n awyddus i ohebu ar bethau chwaraeon fel y tîm cenedlaethol. Fel mae'n digwydd, oedd o'n gyfnod reit dda i ddechrau gwneud hynny. Ond be nes i ffeindio oedd bod na gyfleoedd i wneud hynna, mynd i'r cenedlaethau'r wasg, dilyn y gema y tîm, ac hefyd bod y gynulleidfa wedi dechrau ymateb yn bositif i'r coverage oedden ni yn ei roi wedyn i'r tîm cenedlaethol. Yn aml iawn oedd gennym ni'r chwaraewyr ar y clawr pan oedd yna gemau rhyngwladol o gwmpas ac y gynulleidfa'n gwerthfawrogi'r cynnwys oedden ni gael. Be oedden ni'n sylwi hefyd oedd bod y gymdeithas Pêl-droed hefyd yn amenable iawn i hynny ddigwydd. O'n i'n troi fyny i'r cynhadledd ar wasg yma fel sydd yn yr settings yma, mae yna rhyw fath o pecking order does, o pwy ydy'r cyfryngau sy'n cael mynd gyntaf, cyfryngau mwyaf ac ar y pryd o'n i'n gweithio un o'r ei llai ag yn yr iaith Gymraeg, felly o'n i, fysa lot yn ystyried bod fi reit lawr yn gwylod y pecking order ma'n fan hyn, ond mi oedd na dal gyfleoedd yn y gynhadledd lle ar y diwedd mi o'n i'n cael gofyn yr cwestiynau yn Gymraeg, a fel oedd Ian yn sôn yn gynharach, mi oedden nhw wedi dechrau gwneud y cynhadleddau lle oedd y chwaraewyr oedd ar y top table yn ateb yn Gymraeg o flaen y stafell i gyd, ni dim mynd off i'r stafell ochr. A dwi'n cofio ar y dechrau, fydda na gyfryngau yn eistedd yn y gynulleidfa rhai o bapur newydd yn Llundain neu Llywynag neu Sianeli Saesnig, oedd unwaith mae'n troi at y siaradwyr Cymraeg wedyn, reit, sy'n angen i ni wrando i hyn, maen nhw'n dechrau siarad ymysg ei gilydd, cameras off, etc. Achos doedd hynna ddim o bwys iddyn nhw, ond a felly o'n i wastad yn gobeithio bod pwy nag oedd yna mynd i ddeud rhywbeth really diddorol, oedd yn golygu bod pawb arall yn methu, dim ond ni gyfryngau Cymraeg yn y gael. A weithio fyna digwydd achos oedd gennych chi bobl fel Sian Roberts, is-hyfforddwr oedd ar y pryd, felly i'r cyfryngau Saesneg, assistant manager, sgenna fi ddim rili lot o ddordeb be mae'r assistant manager yn dweud, ond i ni, oedd ni'n gwybod bod o'n berson sy'n alluog ac efo lot i ddeud, so weithio oeddech chi'n cael. Ond oedd hwnna jyst yn arwydd, ar y dechrau oedd yr agwedd na, reit, mae rhain yn cael go nhw rwan, ond yn ar y deg mae'n dod yn fwy normal, a da ni sylwi, erbyn rwan, mae'n cael ei dderbyn anghydweithwyr sy'n gweithio'n adrodd chwaraewyr yn BBC rwan sy'n yn amlwg yn neud lot mwy o hynna. Dyddiau yma, maen nhw'n gweld hwnna lot mwy rwan. Dwi wedi gweithio i'r BBC hefyd ar bethau chwaraeon o droi dro ar panel canol na wedi cwpl o lyniau o honna i yng Nghwpan y Byd. O'n i'n rhan o'r tîm newyddion ath i Gwpan y Byd ei ohebu. Felly, fel ydych chi'n gweld o'r top na, o'n i'n holi cyfnogwyr tu allan y stadiwm ar ôl y gêm, ymateb a bethau fel la, a hwnna ar newyddion MacAoidh fydd yn trafod sut yn y byd oedden ni'n mynd i ddod allan o'r grŵp ar ôl y ddwy gêm gyntaf na, nath ddim digwydd yn amlwg. Ond rhywbeth arall dwi wedi sylwi wrth ohebu i'r cyfryngau, i gwahanol cyfryngau Cymraeg, ydy, mae yna wahaniaeth hefyd yn be mae'r gynulleidfa weithiau isio o ran cynnwys, felly pan mae'n dod at Pêl-droed, mae yna bach mwy o blurred lines weithiau yn y cyfryngau Cymraeg rhwng be di newyddion a be ydi chwaraeon, lle dwi'n teimlo hwnna fwy defined yn y Saesneg, ond yn y cyfryngau Cymraeg, mae yna ddiddordeb, fel oedd Ian yn sôn, mae nhw ddechrau plethu pethau fel hunaniaeth a bethau fel yna i mewn i be mae nhw'n wneud. A mae straeon fel yna, oedden ni'n gweld yn boblogaidd ymysg y gynulleidfa hefyd, pethau, straeon ynglyn â tîm y merched yn dechrau dysgu Cymraeg ar y bethau fel yna, neu pan oedd Gareth Bale yn sôn am rhywbeth diwylliannol neu rhywbeth fel yna mewn cynadledd i'r wasg. Ddim o ddiddordeb i rei cyfryngau eraill, ond mae o ddiddordeb i'n cynulleidfaoedd ni. Ben Davies yn y gynhadledd yng Nghwpan y Byd, mae wedi cael ei grybwyll yn barod, i'r cyfryngau eraill oedd yn eistedd yna. Mi oedden nhw eisiau clywed be oedd gan Ben Davies i ddeud am y gêm gyntaf, be oedden nhw'n meddwl am yr unol daleithiau. O'n i'n eistedd yn y press conference efo bron dim diddordeb yn be oedd o'n mynd i ddeud. O'n i yna i ohebu ar y ffaith bod o ar fi'n siarad Cymraeg yn blaen i clipio hwnna fyny a roi hwnna fyny ar y cyfryngau cymdeithasol. Doedd o'n really otch be oedd o'n mynd i ddeud. O'n i'n mynd i ohebu ar hwnna beth bynnag. Felly i mi oedd o stori wahanol i be oedd o'i bawb arall. A'r ffaith bod y cyfleoedd yna'n cael eu cynnig yn amlwg o fydd i ni.
Os dwi'n gallu, mae Derek wedi sôn am beth sy'n digwydd gyda'r Pêl-droed ac y pobl sydd ddim yn siarad ar iaith, a'r pobl di-Gymraeg. Beth ydy'r sefyllfa, beth ti'n meddwl yn digwydd yn Nghymru?
Reit, mae hwn yn ddiddorol. So, oedd Derek yn sôn o fyna am bobl sy'n gwylio gema ar BBC Alba a gymosib sydd ddim yn siarad Gaeleg ond yn gwylio beth bynnag achos mae tîm nhw ymlaen. Dwi'n meddwl bod yr esiampl mwyaf amlwg ar S4C allai ddangos hwnna chi, a dwi'n gwybod nes ti sôn, Derek, am pa mor ddibynadwy ydy ffigurau gwylio. Dwi'n mynd i ddefnyddio nhw beth bynnag achos dyma beth mae S4C yn dweud. Dwi ddim yn gweithio S4C gyda llaw, os oes yna rhywun yn gen S4C yma, dwi ddim yn datgelu unrhyw trade secrets yn fan hyn, achos mae'r rhain i gyd yn dod o'ch adroddiad blynyddol chi. Ond mae hwn 10 rhaglen uchaf S4C o ran nifer y gwylwyr ar draws y flwyddyn gyfa ym mhob categori y maes, nid jyst chwaraeon di hwn, pob categori unrhyw raglen ar S4C. Dwi'n mynd nôl 10 mlynedd, 2015, faint o gema Pêl-droed oedd yn 10 rhaglen uchaf S4C. Dyna'r ateb, dod na ddim un. 2016, mae'n cwpl o gema yn ymddangos, cwpl o gema cwpan yn cynnwys Cas Newydd a Chaerdydd. Wedyn, mae'n wahaniaeth mawr pan ydyn ni'n dod i 2017, achos erbyn hynna mae'r Euros wedi bod, mae'r bwrlwm yna wedi bod, a crucially, mae S4C wedi cael hawliau i ddangos gema Cymru yn yr Euros na, ag wedyn tu hwnt. Felly mae rheina'n dechrau'n ddangos, ydych chi'n gweld, am y tro cyntaf, yr rhaglen fwyaf poblogaidd drwy'r flwyddyn gyfa oedd un o'r gema Pêl-droed, Iwerddon Nebyn Cymru. Yn amlwg, mae rhif 3 a rhif 9 ar y restr gema Euros oedd rheina, ond mi oedd yn o'r sianeli eraill hefyd. A mae nhw dal yn llwyddo i gyrraedd y 10 ucha. Wedyn, 2018, mae pob un o'r 5 rhaglen ucha mwyaf poblogaidd ar S4C trwy'r flwyddyn yn gema Pêl-droed. Oherwydd, beth ydych chi wedi gwneud ydy cyflwyno y Pêl-droed i'r gynulleidfa, a mae'r gynulleidfa'n amlwg wedi bod eisiau gwylio, a mae hwn yn amlwg wedi bod o fydd i S4C. Be wnaeth chi sylwi o'r rhif ar y top, Cymru nefyn Iwerddon, dros 600,000 di gwylio, a wneith llawer ohonoch chi sylwi bod hwnna'n nifer uwch na'r nifer o siaradwyr Gymraeg yng Nghymru gyfan. Felly, unai mae pob un siaradwyr Cymraeg yng Nghymru wedi gwylio gema a mwy, neu be mae'n ddeitha chi ydy bod cyfran sylweddol, os nad mwy na thebyg, mwyafrif y gynulleidfa yna nath wylio'r gêm, a mae siŵr gema eraill, yn bobl di-Gymraeg. Felly mae Pêl-droed wedi dod â gwylwyr i'r sianel sydd ddim yn siarad Cymraeg a fydda mwy na thebyg ddim yn gwylio rhaglenni eraill ar y sianel. Yn hynny o beth, mae'n sicr mae Pêl-droed wedi bod o fydd i'r cyfrwng Cymraeg, iaith Lleiafrifol yma. Mae'n just skipio trwy'r ein yn sydyn. 2019, eto, mae yna 4 gêm yn y 10 ucha. 2020, dim ond un yn y 10 ucha, ond mae Covid yn amlwg yn taro teg at diwedd o flwyddyn am hwnna'n effeithio bethau. Mae yna un gêm sy'n cynnwys tîm domestig hefyd yn 13 ar y restr.
That was one of ours.
That was, yeah. Joint venture. 2021, pethau'n pigo fyny eto, mae yna 3 yn y 5 uchaf, 2 gêm yn y 5 ucha. 2022, eto 4 gêm yn y 10 ucha gamber o, ag eto y nifer reit uchel yn gwylio hwnna. 2023, 5 gêm yn y 10 ucha, eto y niferoedd y gêm ucha na yn agos iawn at nifer y siaradwyr Cymraeg, unwaith eto y gêm, y rhaglen fwyaf poblogaidd ar y sianel ers 5 mlynedd. A llynedd, eto 5 gêm yn y 6 uchaf. Gan gynnwys y ffigwr hollol sofrdanol yna o 1.2 miliwn nath wylio Cymru yn colli'r gêm ail gyfle i Wlad Pwyl. Ond unwaith eto yn tanlinelli'r pwynt na bod mwyafrif helaeth o bobl nath wylio hwnna, sydd wedi cyfrannu at y ffigurau gwylio yna yn bobl di-Gymraeg. A mae hwnna dwi'n meddwl yn siarad at y pwynt na. Cos dwi fy hun wedi chamber flicio o blaen, gweld gêm Pêl-droed ar BBC Alba. Dwi'n yn deall beth sy'n cael ei ddeud, ond mae'n gêm Pêl-droed yn fel, na i wylio, a mae'n gyfrwng lle, mae gêm Pêl-droed yn gyfrwng lle does dim rhaid deall popeth sy'n digwydd i allu gwylio ac i allu cymryd o mewn, ond wrth gwrs mae cyfryngau Ieithoedd Lleiafrifol yn gallu defnyddio fel ffordd effeithiol o ddod ac yn llydfad newydd mewn.
So I will pick it up from there because I had the personal experience as well with my dad back in the 90s when ETV, the Basque television channel, you were able to watch it in places as far away as Colombia, where I was. And my dad used to watch the Basque ball every time he could, even though he couldn't understand a word. But it actually brought a lot of things about Basque and the Basque language and the possibility that we had to talk about it because it now existed in his own view, something that did not exist ever before. So I was going to bring that back first to mine and then to that actually, about that effect on the population who doesn't usually speak the language, but whether you think it does help bringing people in or it just serves the purpose of showing good audience figures as has been the discussion so far.
Yes, I would say the situation in Britain is quite different because we don't have a Breton national team. So, and we can see the main, with the matches with more audience are the ones of the national team. So this is the first difference. And so people are attached to a club, but it has not a strong link with the identity of Brittany. It's the identity of the club. So it's more difficult to have a link with identity through clubs and through a national team, I would say. And also the other difference is that there is no matches broadcasted on TV in Britain. There used to be a long time ago, but there is not now. So you have to. It's a strategy. If you want to watch a game in Britain, you put on the TV, turn off the sound, put on the radio. So there is a few people doing this, but it would be the solution. And I think we have to communicate maybe more on the fact that it exists, that people can do this. But as I said, radio is a non-profit organization. It's small economy, small teams, so that they don't really have time to work a lot on communication and let more people know that this offer exists. So I think it's really where we have to work more, so that, for instance, parents who have their children who are in Breton school can do this, like put the match of Stade Bressois on TV, turn off the sound and put the radio on. But we have to communicate a lot to reach this, so it's quite hard. Yeah.
I think even in the Scottish context, it's not dissimilar in some ways in that yes, football particularly has been used to drive viewing figures to achieve the aims that they're placed in front of the channel. But there's the flip side of that is, I still remember probably about 1985, probably the Rouse Cup days that Alan will remember Scotland playing England at Wembley in the tail end of the home internationals kind of era and listening to a couple of those games broadcast in Gaelic. Which was a real kind of a novelty. I hadn't heard it before, and then for years it didn't happen again. Mm-hmm. So one of the other things that I know that I have tried to do, and those of us working on the games are kind of aware of, is that yes, we're doing it to drive figures, to drive numbers to the channel, but we're also for ourselves, for a minoritized linguistic community, we're doing it as something whereby we do want to impose ourselves on the rest of the society. We do want to remind the people who have no concept that we're there, that we are there, and that we are part of the society that they dominate and that they wish to quite often monopolise to themselves. We have had lots of minor backlashes. Almost every time we do a game, we'll get somebody somewhere saying, "Why are you here? Oh yeah, you guys. Oh yeah, I don't understand a word of it." All that usual nonsense that you get all the time. But at the same time, we hope that by doing it, we are giving my analogue today the chance to sit at home and watch and not even think about the fact that the football's on and it's in Gaelic, or the rugby's on and it's in Gaelic, or that there are 2 or 3 shinty players there on telly speaking shinty after having won something. Because as Gaelic speakers, we are very much a minority. We're really marginalised in terms of our role in society. Having a deputy first minister who can speak Gaelic is just mind-blowing still. It used to be absolutely mind-blowing to me doing rugby games at Scotstoun and at Murrayfield for Glasgow Warriors in Edinburgh when the Scarlets would be up, or the Dragons, or the Ospreys and Cardiff, and they would have a choice of players they could interview in Welsh. They had coaches that they could interview in Welsh. They had, a number of former internationals they could use as analysts in Welsh. We don't have that. So to be able to park our tanks on other people's lawns and say that we are here, even though what we're doing is slightly hampered by the fact that we're such a minority, is really important, I think, for us in terms of our own perception of ourselves as a community.
Mae un cwestiwn arall di. A beth sy'n digwydd ar yr ochr arall? Beth sy'n digwydd gyda'r ochr o'r cynulleidfa yma? Oeddech chi'n cael y cyfle i galw neu i wneud rhywbeth nôl i chi ar ôl i ti'n wneud rhywbeth am y gêm ar ôl yr adroddiad. Os chi'n cael pobl sy'n dweud rhywbeth yn Twitter neu rhywbeth o pobl sy'n ffonio, fathau, yn y radio, os chi'n digwydd gyda'r gemau yn Gymraeg neu yn Gwydiel y Coralfan neu o Llydaweg.
O ran ymateb y gynulleidfa, ie. Dwi ddim yn sôn am brofiad personol yn hyn, achos dwi'n mynd i gyfeirio eto at y gemau yma, ond mae hwn yn rhywbeth dyn ni wedi weld. Mae yna gyfnod helaeth yn fan hyn lle mae'r gemau rhyngwladol yn wedi bod ar S4C, ond S4C di'r unig sianel y free-to-air lle mae'r gemau wedi bod arno fo, mae wedi bod ar sianelu Lloeren yn Saesneg. Ac be ydych chi'n gael ydi weithiau sylwadau ar y cymdeithasol bobl, I can only watch it in Welsh though. Ar ateb gan bobl eraill ydi, well, yes, at least you can watch it. Hynny di, so mae yna rei bobl fydda yn cwyno am y ffaith bod nhw ddim yn gallu gwylio fo'n y Saesneg. Mae hwnna'n amlwg yn mynd i newid rwan, achos mae yna gytundeb newydd yn dod mewn, lle mae BBC ag S4C yn dangos y gemau, felly bydd yna newid i'r sefyllfa yma yn y dyfodol. Ond hefyd, be ydych chi wedi gael ydi lot o bobl a dysgwyr Cymraeg enghraifft, neu pobl sydd ddim really siarad lot o Gymraeg sydd wedi bod yn deud hefyd. So mae hwn yn i gyd anecdotal, ond lot sydd wedi sôn bod gwylio'r gemau yn Gymraeg wedi bod o helpu iddyn nhw ddysgu Cymraeg. Mae hwnna'n helpu iddyn nhw glywed o mewn setting lle maen nhw'n gwylio'r Pêl-droed a maen nhw'n bigo fyny chydig bach yn Gymraeg trwy osmosis. Ac hyd yn oed rhai dwi wedi gweld ambell un sy'n crybwyll bod bydd na opsiwn rwan i wylio'r gemau yn Saesneg eto ar y BBC. Yn amlwg, ydych chi'n mynd i gael rhai o'r gynulleidfa rwan, reit, well gan i wylio fo'n Saesneg, ond mae yna gyfran o bosib, gawn ni weld faint sydd eisiau parhau i wylio fo'n Gymraeg bod nhw allan ddim yn rhugl am resymau bod nhw eisiau marfer yr iaith. So mae hwnna'n rhywbeth da ni wedi weld pobl yn grybwyll. O ran yr ymateb da ni'n gael, mae hwnna'n rhywbeth nes i grybwyll. Mae'r gynulleidfa Gymraeg yn gwerthfawrogi weithiau pan da ni yn gwneud straeon o gwmpas bethau chwaraeon, ond dyn nhw ddim wastad just ynglyn â y canlyniad a'r sgôr a beth sy'n digwydd ar y cae. Mae nhw'n bethau sy'n digwydd o gwmpas hynny. Mae hwnna'n rhywbeth sicr mae'r gynulleidfa sy'n siarad Cymraeg yn gwerthfawrogi. Ond mae yna esiamplau eraill hefyd o raglenni lle mae cynulleidfa di-Gymraeg wedi bod yn tiwnio mewn i gyfryngau iaith Gymraeg oherwydd Pêl-droed, a be mae Pêl-droed yn gynnig. Mae sgorio er enghraifft, ddim yna rhai pobl sy'n cofio nôl i'r 90au pan oedd sgorio'n dangos gemau La Liga a Serie A, a dim ond nhw oedd yn dangos rheina, felly oedd gennych chi gynulleidfa ar draws Prydain oedd yn gwylio rhaglen iaith Gymraeg oherwydd bod nhw'n gallu gwylio hwnna. Y sefyllfa bresennol ydy bod sgorio ydy'r unig sianel sy'n dangos uwch gyngrau'r Cymru, felly os da chi efo diddordeb yn y gyngrau'r yna, dyna'r cyfrwng da chi'n gwylio fo drwyddo os da chi'n siarad Cymraeg neu ddim. Mae yna raglenni hefyd sydd wedi deillio o dwi'n cael mynd nôl, dwi'n bwysio dwi'n mynd nôl rhan at rhai o'r rhaglenni dyn ni wedi gweld ar S4C er enghraifft pethau sydd yn ffwtbol adjacent fel petai oedd na sôn gynharach yn Colleen Ramsey, Ryan Ramsey, rhaglen coginio, dyn ni wedi gweld rhaglenni reality eraill tebyg, Oli a Tanwen, Oli Cooper sy'n chwarae Abertawe, a Tanwen, Uribe sy'n cyflwynydd tywydd. Da ni'n mynd ôl chydig flynyddoedd, oedd yna cwpl o gyfresu efo Jude Cissy, cynraig Jibril Cesar, y chwarae Lerpwl, hi'n Gymraes o'r gogledd, gath i cwpl o reglau. Felly mae yna bethau fel yna hefyd sy'n tynnu diddordeb pobl mewn. Dyn nhw ddim just am y pêl-droed, maen nhw'n bethau sy'n amlwg yn, ie.
Maina?
Yes.
What is then that situation like, that response by the audience? Do you get a lot of response by the audience for?
No, I can say we got a lot of response. We don't know how many people are listening when we are commenting the matches, but the last experience we did, it's for the last game of Stade Brestois in Champions League. It was against Real Madrid. And so what we did is comment live in a pub. And so there were about 40, so it's a smaller level, but there were about 40 people in the pub, so it was nice. And everybody wasn't speaking Breton. Everybody don't speak Breton, but they came with their children who speak Breton, so it was very nice. And at least we had this connection with the audience, so which was very nice. And I think also it can help to communicate on the fact that we are commenting matches on the radio, even if it's not in live in a pub, but maybe like this, more people will know with time that we're doing this. And I think maybe something also we could do to develop Breton and football, or sports in general, it's maybe comment on sports that are not really broadcasted, so smaller sports, handball, basketball, with local teams, or maybe also women matches, which are not so expensive. So I think it could be a solution, but once again, you have to have a lot of energy to do this, because when I work with the journalists on the radio, when they comment matches on the evening, they are almost doing this in addition to their full-time jobs. It's because they're passionate, so they're almost doing this as volunteers. So asking them to do an effort to go for other sports or other games, it's a lot for the teams.
I think one other thing that there's a fundamental difference as well. Talking about the media, we all focus on television and more social media, but there's a fundamental difference when you're doing radio, when you're doing television. You know, I do a lot of radio as well, and for me it's an entirely different prospect when I know that everybody who is tuned into what I'm doing is listening to what I'm saying, not simply turning down the volume and watching the pictures, or doing the crossword and looking up when there's a goal. You know, it's an entirely, because it's a different medium, because it is entirely language driven, you feel like you are broadcasting to your community then. As opposed to when you're doing it on the television, you're aware that people are just dipping in and out. Even then, I like to try and give the Gaelic speakers something extra. You know, save some of the good stuff for the people who can understand what I'm saying. As you know, just put the wallpaper out in English. I'm not sure I managed to do that, but I think in terms of trying to get audience warmth and buy-in from your traditional audience, your community audience, I think it's really important to try and cater to them, reach out to them while you're doing it. I mean, when you do that bilingual thing, it's natural for us to do, but you're inevitably going to get a whole pile of feedback that you're not looking for, and that you don't want. And you were talking about Aaron Ramsey when he gets a tweet and gets slagged off for it. Well, who cares? That's not who the tweet in Welsh was for, and in a way, that's not who our programme is for. If you're going to just hate us because we're there, then, you know, that's fine, go and watch another channel. If you really want to watch Rangers against Brechin in the Challenge Cup because they've gone bust, tough luck. You're going to have to do that on us. You know, and it is, anytime we've taken a step up in terms of profile, the volume of criticism and vitriol has increased as well. But it has gradually declined over the last 20 years nearly as it is that we've been doing it. So I think in terms of a normalisation strategy, to some extent, it is working. Maybe.
Wel, dwi eisiau agor y maes, os ydych chi eisiau gwneud cwestiynau? Rhywun? Ni'n cael y mic.
Hello, Dr. Nina Jones from Cardiff Met, Media and Communications Lecturer. Thank you so much, that was really interesting. I'm not sure if this is a question or an observation, so I'll try and see if you can just respond to my observation. But I'm noticing a real theme here with this particular panel around the importance of public service broadcasting still, and its impetus for sort of having a duty and a remit to represent the nations and regions, and obviously with that the kind of minority languages. And we're seeing from Ofcom statistics recently over the last year or two the kind of decline in younger generations utilising public service broadcasting in the way that we need them to in this domain. And moving on to kind of streaming and platform services, particularly around television now, especially. And we're seeing streaming platform services really starting to buy or take a bite of the apple in terms of sports broadcasting and live sports broadcasting now as well. So I suppose, I'm not sure what the question is here, but it's just around maybe a little bit of a way for the public service broadcasters really to keep the minority language coverage alive from what you've been demonstrating here. So thank you.
If I could respond to that, one thing that we have had a big issue with is essentially as the years have gone by, we're being kicked slightly further and further down the rungs of what's available to us budgetary-wise and in terms of profile-wise. When nobody was caring about women's sport, we were able to pick up women's football, no problem at all. Now that people are caring about women's sport, it's harder. We're not getting as many Scotland women's games, for example. Even, it's a slightly telling tales out to school one, at one point there was a very high-profile game that we were doing that was kind of a landmark sports-wise as well as language-wise. And we were going to be doubling up with a dual sort of coverage, Gaelic and also a red button English. And it actually transpired on the day that there was an attempt to take us off air and make it be English only, or primarily English, to just upend what had been happening up to that because of the prestige element. And with women's sport, for example, Sky are now interested again. The BBC are more interested than they were, so it becomes harder. But I think one thing that minority broadcasters can still go for is live events. This is happening now. If you want to watch it now, you watch it with us. Streaming does make it harder, but it is still one way that it can be done. It makes it more and more difficult, I think, to do things like drama that you can dip in and out of, even comedy that people watch 2 minutes of. But if there is an event that people want to watch now, if you can get that event, then you can drive your traffic to your site, channel, language, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I'd echo that point because I think, you know, like you see from this example, when you put live sports on, especially if you have exclusive rights to those sports, people will tune into them and they will by and large be the most popular programmes on your channel that year. You know, it goes probably not just for football, you know, rugby obviously popular in Wales as well, and obviously I haven't included them here, but the majority of the rest of the top 10 in a lot of these lists would have been rugby games as well. And yeah, it's a little bit different in Wales, obviously, where, you know, I'm not going to go too much into it, but you have BBC and S4C who are sometimes in cooperation on things, sometimes in competition on things. But yes, finding those, making the most of actually when you do have those opportunities and you have rights for live events, yes, make the most of them because actually they really will make a difference for you.
Diolch yn fawr, Dapaleif. I'll ask the question in English, if that's all right. And I'll start with a confession. I was born and brought up in London and was used to hearing many different languages around me, but got one hell of a shock when I realised that there were more indigenous languages in the UK beyond English. And I'm a regular viewer of BBC Alapa, as well as S4C and the other channels. And in some of the work that I currently do, working with the Welsh Government on international relations, I'm aware that for some programmes for S4C that more viewers are watching from outside of Wales than inside Wales. And also the fact that I can watch BBC Alapa down here in Cardiff. So I was just quite interested to know, I can't imagine if the situation is similar in Brittany, but I don't know. How important is that, I think, for the channels to have viewers from beyond our borders watching?
I'll chip in. I think it is important in terms of impact, potential impact, and it is important in terms of potential horizons. One difficulty is who knows and who cares, because all you can do about that is report anecdotally. and is report feedback, because you're not going to get necessarily bad figures. I'm not even sure BBC Alba would be measured in bad figures outside of Scotland, because it's technically a Scotland-only channel in that regard. Satellite platforms are so hard to identify. And in any case, when you're talking about 200,000 people out of a population of 60 million potentially watching, or even more or less than that, it's really hard. But in terms of morale, it's really important if people can know it's there. And just an aside to that, there's a big change coming in speech broadcasting from the BBC soon, whereby BBC Sounds access is going to be limited to UK only. There will be some form of external, outside UK access to it, but it's going to be really limited. And that's probably going to have a big effect on our Gaelic diaspora. And for example, us talking to Gaelic speakers in Canada, North America, other places where they do exist and they do feedback to our programmes and they do participate. And I'm sure the same is true of Welsh. And I'm not sure about the BBC won't affect any Breton diaspora, but that is definitely going to have an effect as well in terms of the awareness.
Just to add to that, I think we haven't really mentioned social media, but that's an additional platform that obviously a lot of broadcasters use now, and actually, you know, your reach on social media can sometimes be vastly, exponentially more than how many view your channel. You know, there are examples of content, you know, Sgôr who do the football games on, you know, Welsh Premier League games in Wales, where, you know, maybe the viewing figures are X, but actually social media viewing figures on certain clips or goals or incidents might be much higher. And the same, you know, I remember there was an example at the World Cup, Newyddion put out the video where there was an incident, the incident where Laura McAllister had trouble with the security going into the stadium because of the rainbow bucket hats, I think it was, yeah. And that clip, I think, was viewed over 1 million times on Twitter within less than a day, which again, you know, so there's that's obviously a way to reach out to younger audiences, like you mentioned as well, that might not be following on traditional channels, and that's an outlet that you can use as well.
Wel, diolch yn fawr iawn i gyd am bethau wnaethon ni drafod nawr. Dwi'n credu mae'n pwysig i gael y cyfryngau sy'n mwy genedlaethol dyn ni wedi cael ar y diwedd o ddiwrnod yma. Roedd yn neis iawn i clywed llawer o bethau am sut mae'r Pêl-droed ac Ieithoedd Lleiafrifol yn byw yn yr un sefyllfa. Diolch yn fawr iawn i chi. Diolch hyn.
Diolch yn fawr iawn i'r panel ola, ac i gloi y gynhadledd, diolch yn fawr iawn i chi gyd ar y panel, i gloi'r gynhadledd neu'r symposiwm, mae'n ddrwg gen i, dwi'n mynd i ofyn i'r person nath agor y symposiwm 8 awr yn ôl, neu rhywbeth fel na, a dwi'n meddwl bod ni wedi cael 8 awr ffantastig, ond mi wneith Bethan Webb gloi i ni rwan. Croeso Bethan.
Diolch Elin. Ges i ran rhededd fawr o agor y gynhadledd bore yma, a mae'n fraint i chloi hi. Mae yna gymaint o bobl i ddiolch chi, ond diolch i chi am fod yn gynulleidfa arbennig ac am gymrhan hardcore fans. Chi ydy ein wal goch ni heddiw drwy'r dydd. Hefyd, ga ddiolch i'r holl gyfranogwyr, yn enwedig pawb sydd wedi teithio i fod yma hefo ni. Mae wedi cyfeithogi'r drafodaeth heb os. Ac mewn undeb y mae'n nerth, da gorau chwarae cyd chwarae ydy. A felly dal ymlaen i drafod sydd rhaid fel ieithoedd llefrifedig. Achos mae gennym ni gymaint i ddysgu yn gilydd, a mae yna gymaint o gryfder o gydweithio hefo'n gilydd. So diolch i chi. A mae Elin wedi deitha fi bod Derek, dwi'n gweld lle mae o, di o dal yma? Bod chi wedi gwneud, you did your radio programme, Radio Nagal, this morning from Cardiff in order to be with us. So great, thanks. You know, people have made a great effort. Diolch. Hefyd, gai ddiolch i Lowri a Heledd o Cymraeg 2050. Dydy o ddim yn hawdd trefnu'r stwff yma. Mae'r trefniadau wedi bod mor llyfn a maen nhw wedi gweithio mor galed. Hefyd i pawb sain, mae'r holl presentations, cyflwyniadau, fideos, mae i gyd wedi bod mor hwydd a llyfn. A hefyd i Aled, sydd wedi bod yn cyfieithu drwy dydd. Diolch. Diolch i chi gyd. Dydy pethau fel yma ddim yn digwydd heb yr holl drefniadau esmwydd. A hefyd, last but not least, Craig and Elin. It was your idea. We were so happy to be a partner, more hapus i fod yn rhan o'r drafodaeth bwysig yma. Diolch am ysbrydoli ni i gael y symposiwm neu'r gynhadledd yma yng nghanolfan yr Urdd. Be dwi wedi dysgu heddiw yma ydy pa mor bwysig ydy'r byd chwaraeon i ni, boed o'n dîm cenedlaethol, boed o'n glwb, neu boed o'n yn y gymuned, mae o yn rhywbeth sy'n uno ni'n dydy. A mae hwnna'n bwysig i ni fel pobl bod yna rhywbeth yn huno ni, a mae'n iaith ni'n gallu huno ni hefyd. Felly, pan da chi roed y ddau efo'i gilydd, mae o'n gyfuniad mor bwerus, a da ni angen adeiladu ar hwn. Achos, da ni'n cyflwyno Bil y Gymraeg ag addysg gyda lwc yn mis Mai, a da ni isio bod yna filiwn o siaradwyr eto yng Nghymru erbyn 2050, ond da ni ddim yn mynd i greu siaradwyr newydd yng Nghymru os na dyn nhw yn gallu cysylltu fe rhywbeth, os na dyn nhw'n teimlo'r emosiwn yna a deall pam bod nhw'n siarad, yna da ni jyst yn creu bobl sydd jyst yn dysgu pwnc. Ond da ni eisiau creu siaradwyr sy'n defnyddio'r iaith a sydd yn dall yr emosiwn iaith na ac yn creu'r cysylltiad efo'i hunaniaeth a hefo'i gwlad. A does na ddim un maes gwell na chwaraeon, ein tîm Pêl-droed cenedlaethol, ein clybiau a'n holl glybiau cymunedol i wneud hynna. Felly, be am gario ymlaen i drafod y pwnc holl bwysig yma, a dwi yn gobeithio na hwn ydy cychwyn trafodaeth ehangach. Mae Elin hefyd yn deud bod ar y marc bore fory yn adrodd yn ôl yr gynhadledd am 7:08, os ydych chi'n codi'n gynnar. Gwrandwch ar yr rhaglen. Hefyd, da ni'n mynd i mlwybro draw i Coffi Co. Da ni wedi archebu gofod yn fanna rhwng 5 a 6:30 mwyn i'n gallu parhau i drafod ar rhydweithio ac ymlacio. Felly, diolch o galon i pawb. Dwi wedi dysgu gymaint. Siwrna saff i'r rhai sydd ddim yn ymuno yn Coffi Co, ond fel arall, please dowch. Mae yna gymaint mwy drafod a diolch yn fawr iawn.